And he was looking for anybody, looking for a man to stand up and make intercession. Now, by the way, intercession, I'm going to now put this out there. We think of intercession because we know the verses talk about we have an intercessor, Yeshua, who intercedes for us. I want to think of intercession from this verse a little differently. He's not looking for a man to say, I'll take all the blame, put it on me. What was he looking for here in verse 16? Someone to stand up and say, I don't know, I'm picturing Pinchas with a spear saying, this madness has got to stop now. That's the intercessor. It's not just the one saying, I'm going to sit there before the throne and plead on your case and take the blame for everything. That mainstream Christian sort of, Messiah did all these things. I'm not saying he doesn't do some of those things. I'm saying here the word intercessor is being used also, by the way, with Yeshua. He came in the flesh and talked to us and said, you need to do this stuff. This is not a joke. This is not a game. And he scolded and chastised the leadership. And he encouraged the people to come and do things right. That's interceding. And then he discipled a bunch of guys to go out and do the same thing. Get in the midst of all the madness and put up a giant bright light of, hey, come over here. We have an answer to the madness. By first pointing out that what you're doing is madness. Because you think you're fine. But it's madness. It's a delusion. And we talk about this idea of having strong delusion. And they did. They definitely had strong delusion. I think I want to read you something we're going to jump to that was not. Let's read in Ephesians chapter 2. Come on, hold your place in Isaiah. But he says, look, we were dead in trespasses and sins in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the rule of authority of the air, and the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. And by the way, these people in verse 1 and 2 thought they were doing things right. Among whom also we once lived in the lusts of our flesh, doing the desires of the flesh and of the mind. Look at, there it is again. And were by nature children of wrath and also the rest. He says, but Elohim, who is rich in compassion, knowing that our mind was wrong and that our hearts were wrong and our desires, that's the lust of the, let's call it the desires of man, the desires of the flesh. He says, knowing that Elohim, who is rich in compassion, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead to him in trespasses, made us alive together by sending us an intercessor who would show us the way. Who would show us the path. And because of that, by favor, you have been saved. In other words, because you've chosen the path, you've merited the favor and being delivered. He gave you the path to the deliverance. When they were in Egypt, they were enslaved, symbolic of us being enslaved to sin. He then what? Sent the messenger. He had his emissary, Moses, come represent and then bring them out. And then he, with the pillar of the fire, the pillar of the cloud, showed them the path out of all of that to the deliverance, the salvation, the promised land. And so this is what's going on here as we're looking at these things. He says, but remember, let's go down to verse 11. He says, remember that you once Gentiles in the flesh, who were called the uncircumcision by what is called circumcision. In other words, you were called Gentiles by the Jews, that at that time you were without Messiah, without the Torah, without the truth, without the light, without life, without the way, excluded from citizenship of Israel and strangers from the covenants. Of course you were strangers. You didn't know there was in Exodus 19, 5 and 6. You didn't know that it was that you needed to obey everything he said. Excluded from the covenants of promise, having no expectation, and without Elohim in the world. But now in Messiah, you were once far off, are now brought near. That's your intercessor. You're not just brought near because the blood covered you and you're forgiven. You're brought near because once you're forgiven, you now have access to the path that leads to the truth and the light and all that other good stuff. The blood doesn't cover you to then say, okay, now whatever you do, it doesn't matter. It now makes it so that everything you do does matter, because without the blood, everything you did wouldn't have mattered. You were dead in your trespasses. That maybe that's a very different, and maybe that has to be profound. We'll put that in like an in focus or a little blurb or something. When you're covered by the blood, now and only now that what you do matters. Nothing you did before mattered. You were dead. Do you understand the difference? But see, Christianity might make you feel like with the blood, now it doesn't matter because with the blood you're covered. He's doing it all for you. He covers you and everything else. No. The blood now makes what you do matters, not what you did. The blood covers and says what you did doesn't matter, now what you do matters. The blood covering says what you did doesn't matter, but everything from this moment forward matters. Is that making any sense? And that's the intercessory aspect of all of this. Here was someone to come. Moses was like an intercessor. He came, he stood before Pharaoh. He said, let my people go. He said, look, you people don't deserve anything, but I'm going to bring you to a place where you're going to learn and be instructed so that now from this point forward, from Sinai forward, everything. Now look, can we agree that in Egypt, nothing they did really mattered? Right? Didn't matter what they did. It only mattered to Pharaoh whether he was going to hit them again or not, or give them more stripes or whatever he's going to do, or kill them. But now, when I bring you to Sinai, he says, I bring you to Sinai, and I teach you my way, and you go into the land. Now Deuteronomy 28 comes into place because now I've shown you, and everything you do matters. You see how that's parallels? That's where the parallel is. The intercessor brings you to the truth, brings you to the place where you can make the changes, shows you how you can be covered, and then everything really does matter going forward. The reason there's got so much problems happening in Isaiah is because in Isaiah, they knew and they blew it. And he's saying, I warned you that what you did matters, and you made bad choices, and now you have consequences.